Good evening and welcome to News of the World. It's Tuesday, August 18th. Tonight we drift slowly across 19 countries, from New Zealand to Uganda. There's nothing you need to do and nowhere you need to be. Settle in and let the world turn. New Zealand has seen its unemployment rate rise to 5.6% in the June quarter, a figure that quietly tells the story of an economy finding its footing after a long stretch of disruption. For a country that prides itself on resilience and steadiness, this kind of number doesn't arrive with alarm, it arrives with a kind of patience. People understand that work comes and goes in cycles, and that the land and the sea and the communities between them have weathered harder seasons than this. What sits beneath the percentage is more human, of course. It's the contractor waiting on a callback, the small business owner recalculating the months ahead, the young person sending out CVs and wondering when the door will open. New Zealanders have a way of holding these things together, the worry and the hope, without too much noise. And there are signs of movement elsewhere too. The country is making it easier to install small-scale solar, which means households and businesses might soon generate more of their own power. There's a quiet kind of optimism in that, the sense that even when the numbers shift unfavorably, people are still building things, still looking forward. If you're still with me, hold that image for a moment. A country that measures its setbacks honestly and keeps going, not in a rush, but with the steady rhythm of a place that knows its own pace. Tonight, that's the story worth carrying from New Zealand. In Armenia, a quiet change has come to the way the country thinks about a working life. The government has lifted a long-standing rule that required public sector employees to step down at 65. For decades, that age cap sat like a kind of invisible door. You could serve your country, your ministry, your community, and then one day the door closed behind you, whether you were ready or not. Now that door stays open. The details of how it will work in practice are still unfolding, but the principle itself is simple and worth noticing. A person's willingness to contribute no longer expires on a fixed date. In a country where public service has deep roots, where institutions carry the weight of memory and continuity, this is a meaningful gesture. It says that experience is not a liability to be managed out, but something a society can still make room for. And in a part of the world where demographics and immigration have made every experienced hand more precious, the change carries a practical weight alongside its symbolic one. There is something gentle about it too. Not a dramatic reform, not a headline that shakes the region, just a country quietly deciding that its older citizens still have something to give and that the work of governing a place benefits from people who have been doing it for a long time. If you're still with me, hold that thought as we move on. Armenia, tonight, is making a little more room. In the United Kingdom, a small but unsettling story has surfaced about the reach of impersonation in political life. Reports say a senior British figure exchanged messages with someone who was pretending to be Susie Wiles, a name familiar to anyone watching American politics, as she serves as a top aide to the US president. The messages apparently went back and forth before anyone realized the sender was not who they claimed to be. The details remain thin, and the full shape of what was said or how long the exchange lasted hasn't been confirmed, but the outline alone is enough to give pause. It's a reminder of how easily trust can be stretched when communication moves through screens and text, where a name and a tone can stand in for a person you've never actually met face to face. For a country that sits at the crossroads of so many diplomatic relationships, the United Kingdom depends on the quiet reliability of its channels, the assumption that a message carries the weight of the person behind it. When that assumption wobbles, even slightly, it doesn't necessarily mean crisis. It means a moment of recalibration. Questions about verification, about how leaders confirm who is on the other end of a conversation, tend to follow stories like this. And then, usually, the systems tighten, and the world keeps turning a little more carefully than before. Afghanistan has reached a difficult milestone 5 years since the Taliban returned to power. The leaders in Kabul marked the anniversary, but for many Afghans, it's not a moment of celebration so much as one of quiet endurance. The country they govern is fragile in ways that numbers can only partly hold. The United Nations reports that child deaths are rising as food distributions face cuts, which means families who are already stretched thin are being stretched further still. And in the capital, an explosion at a school in Kabul is a reminder that even the ordinary act of learning carries risk, and yet Afghans keep reaching for it. Across the country, people are clinging to education for girls, sometimes quietly, sometimes at real personal cost, because they believe a future without it isn't really a future at all. Women, in particular, have asked the world not to look away. One voice reflecting on these 5 years promised to carry theirs, to be their voice where they have been silenced. There is talk, too, of resistance, though it is fragmented, scattered, and far from simple. If you're still with me, here's what sits beneath all of this: a country of 40 million people trying to live ordinary lives inside extraordinary constraints. 5 years on, the loudest stories are about power. The one worth carrying tonight is about the people still choosing to hope. A classroom held open, a meal shared, a promise kept in the dark. Latvia sits on the eastern edge of the European Union, and these days it is feeling that geography in very practical ways. The country's president has warned that Russia is already waging what she calls hybrid war across Europe: sabotage, provocation, pressure designed to unsettle without crossing into open conflict. Along Latvia's border with Belarus, that pressure has become tangible. A drone flying from Belarus was shot down over Latvian territory. The defense ministry confirmed where it came from, and the president has called for more border guards, though the country is short on personnel to staff the frontier the way it would like. All of this carries a cost, and Latvia has been clear about that too. It is asking the European Union for €7 billion to help cope with the fallout from Russia's war, the strain on borders, on security, on the daily machinery of a small country living next door to a conflict it did not choose. There is an economic echo as well. Air Baltic, the national airline, has received approval from its bondholders to defer some interest payments, a small sign of how the wider tension reaches into ordinary commercial life. If you're still with me, picture a country of about 2 million people managing a long border, a modest budget, and a very clear-eyed sense of what is coming across it. Latvia is not panicking, it is asking, and it is telling its allies plainly what it needs. Haiti has lost a friend this week. Tim Carney, an American diplomat who spent his career advocating for countries the world often overlooks, has died at 82. The Miami Herald remembered him as someone who championed Haiti and other nations whose troubles made others look away. That kind of work doesn't always make headlines. But it matters, especially in a place like Haiti, where the news these days carries so much weight. People remain displaced by ongoing unrest. An international mission led by the Organization of American States is being assembled to help. In Washington, the Senate has extended trade programs that keep Haitian goods reaching American shelves, the kind of quiet lifeline that holds livelihoods in place. He was the sort of diplomat who believed that troubled nations deserved more than sympathy. They deserved someone who would listen, who would carry their concerns into rooms they couldn't always enter themselves. It's patient, unglamorous work, the kind that rarely gets noticed until the person doing it is gone. Haiti has known harder weeks than this one, but it has known fewer friends than it deserves. Tim Carney was one of them, and the memory is worth carrying into the night. Azerbaijan has long kept its wealth in the Caspian Sea, the oil and gas that shaped its cities, its roads, and its place in the world. Lately, though, there are signs the country is looking past the rigs. Word from Baku is that the government wants to nurture a technology sector, building something that doesn't depend on what lies beneath the ground. It's a quiet ambition, and the timing makes a kind of sense. Over the first 7 months of this year, oil exports through the BTC pipeline fell by more than 8%. That pipeline is the long artery carrying Caspian crude to the Mediterranean, and the decline isn't a crisis. But it's a reminder that even rich fields don't run forever, that an economy built on one thing eventually has to ask what comes next. Azerbaijan's answer, it seems, is to cultivate the kind of work that grows in offices and labs rather than in the dust of extraction. Whether that takes root the way oil once did is a question for the years ahead. For now, the effort itself, the quiet tending of something new, is the story worth carrying. A country on the Caspian shore, looking at the horizon, deciding the future might not look like the past. Tunisia has been quietly working on something that doesn't often make the headlines: the careful mending of its landscapes. Research from the International Food Policy Research Institute has been looking at conservation and restoration across the country, and the lessons held in land that has to do many things at once. A multifunctional landscape is land that isn't just one thing. It might feed a community, shelter wildlife, hold water, and carry the roots of old groves, all in the same place. In Tunisia, where the land stretches from Mediterranean coast to desert margins in the south, that balance has always been delicate. The work described here is about holding that balance, restoring what has been degraded, protecting what remains, and doing it in a way that lets people and nature both carry on. What stands out, even in the outline of these findings, is the patience involved. Restoration isn't a single dramatic act. It's a slow tending, season after season, choosing the right plants for the right soil, watching what holds and what doesn't. It's the kind of work that rarely announces itself, but in a country where so much of life still depends on the land, it may be among the most important quiet things happening right now. If you're still with me, that's Tunisia tonight, tending its ground. Gambia has been working on a plan to match young people with work, and this week that plan took a quiet step forward. The country's national apprenticeship policy has been validated, a term that sounds technical, but really means the framework is ready to move from draft to practice. The idea behind it is straightforward: give people skills, and those skills become jobs, and those jobs become growth. For a small West African nation where a large share of the population is young, that chain matters more than it might sound elsewhere. Apprenticeship is an old idea, of course, learning a trade beside someone who already knows it. What a national policy tries to do is bring that tradition into something more structured. So a young welder in Serekunda or a tailor in Brikama can point to a qualification that means something beyond their own neighborhood. It's about making sure that skill is recognized, portable, and useful in an economy that needs more hands and more confidence. The details of the policy aren't widely published yet, so it's hard to say exactly how it will work on the ground, but the direction is clear enough. Gambia is betting that if you build the bridge between what people can do and what the economy needs, people will cross it and carry others with them. If you're still with me, hold that thought. A policy on paper is one thing. A young person with a trade and a future that feels a little more open, that's another. And that's the distance Gambia is trying to close. Bolivia has been working through a familiar problem for a landlocked nation that depends heavily on imported fuel. Diesel supplies have grown tight, and the government has decided to raise prices for large-scale buyers as a way of steadying the market. It is the kind of measure that sounds technical on the surface, just a line in an economic bulletin, but underneath it touches the rhythm of everyday life. Diesel moves trucks across the high plateaus and down into the lowlands. It powers generators in towns where the grid does not always reach. So when supply falters, people feel it in the cost of food, in the hum of a market stall, in whether a bus runs on time. What Bolivia is trying to do here is not dramatic, it is corrective. By asking bigger buyers to pay more, the hope is that the fuel keeps flowing to where it is needed most, and that the strain eases before it reaches the ordinary consumer too sharply. Whether that balance holds is something only time and the coming weeks will tell. For now, it is a country making a careful adjustment, the sort of quiet decision that rarely makes headlines beyond its borders but matters a great deal within them. And if you're still with me, that is Bolivia tonight, holding its economy steady with a steady hand, one measured step at a time. Palau sent a women's basketball team to the FIBA Micronesian Cup, and among those wearing the country's colors was a player named Mangeldil Azuma Malsal. The tournament gathered women's sides from across the region, Guam, Palau, and other Micronesian neighbors, to meet on the same court under the same rules. Guam's team proved formidable, taking their match against Palau by a score of 142-37. It's a lopsided result, and it would be easy to read the wrong story into those numbers. But for Palau, a small archipelago nation in the Western Pacific, fielding a national team at all means drawing players from scattered islands where the sea connects more than roads ever could. Every athlete who steps onto that court carries a community with them. Family, friends, the people back home watching from the bleachers or waiting to hear how it went. And there's something steadying about it. Small nations meeting their neighbors not in conference rooms but in competition, bound by the same rules and the same court, whatever the final tally says. The Micronesian Cup will move on. The players will head home, and in Palau, the story of it will travel the way most things do there, quietly, across the water, carried from one island to the next. Andorra is a country that fits between two others, France and Spain, high in the Pyrenees, and for most people who think of it at all, they think of snow. Skiing is what put this tiny principality on the map for travelers. The resorts, the chairlifts, the long winter season that draws people up from Barcelona and Toulouse. But there's a quieter argument being made for Andorra these days, one that says you don't need a pair of skis to find a reason to go. In the warmer months, the same mountains that fill with skiers become something else entirely. Hiking trails, mountain passes, the kind of air that feels different when you've earned it by walking. Andorra's villages, often overlooked in the rush to the slopes, hold their own pace. The capital, Andorra la Vella, sits in a valley and carries the weight of a much older place than its duty-free reputation might suggest. There's a blend here that's hard to find elsewhere. Catalan is the official language, French and Spanish influences pressing in from both sides, and a political system that still recognizes two co-princes, one of whom is the president of France. It's a small country, one of the smallest in Europe, and that smallness is part of what makes it worth a second look. You can cross it in an afternoon, but the suggestion gently made is that you might not want to. If you're still with me, let's let that settle. A country that asks to be noticed for more than the thing it's most famous for? Ghana has taken a quiet but meaningful step this week by ratifying the African Union Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls. It is the kind of news that doesn't make a lot of noise, but it carries real weight for the people it touches. The convention, adopted by the African Union, asks member states to commit to preventing violence, protecting those who are harmed, and ensuring that survivors can find justice and support. For Ghana, this ratification means joining other African nations in a shared continent-wide promise, one that recognizes that the safety of women and girls is not a private matter, but a public responsibility. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which issued the statement, has long encouraged governments to move from words to action on this front. Ghana's decision aligns with that call. It is, in many ways, a formal acknowledgement of what so many communities already know, that ending violence requires both law and will. The convention covers a broad range of harms, from domestic abuse to harmful traditional practices, and asks governments to address them not in isolation, but as part of a wider effort to build societies where women and girls can live freely and without fear. There is still work ahead, of course. Ratification is a beginning, not an ending. But it is a beginning with the force of law behind it, and with a continent watching and walking together. If you're still with me, hold that thought, a promise made in Accra, echoed across Africa, carried into the night. Micronesia stretches across a vast corner of the Western Pacific, and most nights the ocean beneath those scattered islands holds its secrets close. But recently, deep-sea cameras lowered nearly 9,000 feet into the midnight waters spotted something rarely seen by human eyes, 2 bigfin squid drifting in the dark. These are extraordinary creatures. Their long, slender fins stretch out like wings, and their tentacles trail beneath them on thin elbow-like arms, giving them an almost ghostly shape. Sightings are so uncommon that each one adds a small piece to what scientists know about life in the deepest parts of the ocean. To find 2 together in waters off Micronesia is a quiet but meaningful thing. It suggests that these deep waters may hold more life than anyone has yet measured. The people of Micronesia have always lived close to the sea, reading its surface for fish and weather and navigation. But below the surface, far beyond the reach of sunlight, there is a world still being discovered. 2 rare squid caught briefly on camera and then gone again into the dark. A reminder that even in familiar waters there are neighbors we have never met. Nauru sits out in the deep Pacific, a small island nation that most of the world passes over without ever quite landing there. But if you live there, the sky matters more than most places, because the sky is the road. Everything comes by air or by sea, and the national carrier Nauru Airlines has long been one of the quiet lifelines keeping that country connected to its neighbors. This week word comes that a new Micronesian airline is eyeing a partnership with Nauru Airlines. The details are still spare, as these things often are in their early stages, but the intention itself tells you something. It tells you that even in a region of scattered atolls and vast ocean distances, people are still building connections, still looking for ways to make the distances shorter and the routes steadier. Aviation in the Pacific is not glamorous, it is practical. It is whether a family can reach a hospital, whether goods arrive, whether a small economy can hold its place in a wider network. Nauru Airlines has been doing that work for years, sometimes under difficult circumstances, and now another carrier wants to share in it. That is not a loud story. It will not echo across the world's headlines. But it is the kind of story that matters deeply to the people who live within it, the kind where a partnership in the sky can quietly change what is possible on the ground. And so Nauru, small and far from most places, finds itself at the center of a conversation about connection. In Jordan, the Jordan Valley has long been a corridor for migrating birds, storks among them, traveling ancient routes between continents. These days, that passage has become more dangerous than it should be. Dozens of storks have been electrocuted along power lines in the valley, and officials are urging action to make the infrastructure safer for the birds. The Jordan Valley sits below sea level, a warm ribbon of land that has always drawn wildlife as well as people. Storks pass through on migration, riding thermals in great groups, resting on whatever tall structures they find. Power lines, unfortunately, are plentiful, and unprotected poles can be deadly when a bird touches 2 wires at once. It is a problem with known solutions. Insulating materials, perches designed to keep birds clear of live wires, rerouting lines in key areas. These are tools conservationists have used elsewhere. The call now is to apply them in the Jordan Valley before more storks are lost. What makes this worth carrying into the night is not just the loss. It is the quiet recognition that the infrastructure we build for people and the paths birds have flown for millennia sometimes collide, and that when they do, we can choose to do something about it. The storks will keep coming through the valley, as they have for longer than anyone has been keeping count. Djibouti sits where the Red Sea meets the Gulf of Aden, a small country with an outsized view of the world's shipping lanes. For years, the waters off the Horn of Africa have drawn navies from distant places, China and Japan among them, all pursuing the same threat: piracy from the Somali coast, which has menaced commercial vessels passing through one of the planet's busiest maritime corridors. This week, that effort took a more formal shape. Nations belonging to the Djibouti Code of Conduct, a regional maritime security agreement, agreed to create a combined anti-piracy task force. The idea is straightforward enough: shared patrols, shared information, shared responsibility for waters that belong to no single country but carry trade to nearly all of them. Djibouti itself sits at the center of this, not just geographically but diplomatically. Somalia's prime minister arrived for a first-time visit, a quiet reminder of the ties that bind these neighbors across the Horn. There was football too, a World Cup qualifier against Algeria that didn't go Djibouti's way, and a local club champion whose upcoming continental matches will be played far from home, in Cairo. But the story worth carrying into the night is the one about cooperation at sea, countries choosing to watch the same horizon together from a coast that has seen enough of standing alone. Let me write a calm, grounded story from the thin source material. The source is a final report on a simplified early action protocol for volcanic ash in Comoros, dated June 2026. I should state general since specifics are unavailable beyond the headline. In Uganda, scientists have been watching something move quickly through the malaria parasite, and it is changing how they think about the medicine that has long been Africa's first line of defense. The parasite that causes malaria, Plasmodium falciparum, has developed a cluster of mutations that appear to reduce its susceptibility to the drugs most widely used to treat the disease across the continent. Researchers have documented the emergence and rapid spread of these changes in Uganda, and their findings, published in Nature, describe polymorphisms in a gene called PX1 that seem tied to decreased drug response. This matters far beyond Uganda's borders. The therapy in question is the backbone of malaria treatment across much of Africa, where the disease still claims hundreds of thousands of lives each year, most of them young children. When a parasite adapts, the medicine that once cleared a fever in days can begin to lose its grip. Scientists are careful to say what they know and what they do not. The mutations have spread fast, but understanding exactly how they affect treatment outcomes will take more study. What is clear is the pattern: a parasite finding its way around a familiar drug, moving through communities where malaria is a fact of daily life. Uganda has long been a place where malaria research meets the real world, and the people doing this work are used to watching a stubborn organism adapt. If you're still with me, the thing to hold tonight is not alarm but attention. The medicine is not gone. The science is already turning to meet what the parasite has done. And in the quiet work of laboratories and clinics across Uganda, that conversation between disease and cure goes on. And that's the world for tonight. Wherever you are, whatever tomorrow holds, rest easy. The world will keep turning slowly while you sleep, and we'll take another quiet trip around it tomorrow night. Good night.